Welcome everyone, I'm Robert Dietz from Placerville, and I've got a 67 Mustang here with a small block 347 in it, and I'm getting ready to replace the steering box that came out on the car in 67. The car had manual steering, which was a 19-to-1 ratio. It was modified to a power steering a number of years ago, where they put the power steering unit on, but they didn't change the box. That left me in a position where when I steer, the wheel was going like this just to go straight, which I'm sure many of you people are familiar with. I decided to do this YouTube because ones that I looked at told me that I was either looking at the engine was removed, I was going to have to jack the engine up, there was going to be removing half of the engine, and I was all expecting a 2 to 3 day job. And when I actually jumped in and started doing everything, in fact, it was not that big of a job. So I wanted to let everyone know that if this is something that you're considering, you can take and do it probably in about half a day. I've already taken it apart, and it occurred to me to put this YouTube after that because it really wasn't that difficult. So when you start your job, you're going to have to take and go in. And this is your steering wheel shaft right here, which is going to have your wheel on it. To remove this, you've got the two pieces which go on, and the way that they come out is you push down and twist counterclockwise. So your top horn button will push down and twist, and then the cover piece is also going to push down and twist. Now, I would recommend disconnecting your battery so your horn doesn't go, but if that doesn't bother you, I guess you don't need to do it. But once you do these two things, you'll have your steering wheel, and there have been YouTube saying you really don't need a steering wheel puller to remove this. I needed to have a steering wheel puller to remove it. It would not come off. So I just went to my O'Reilly's, got a steering wheel puller, which they'll loan at no charge. And I was able to pull that steering wheel with not much problem at all. Once you do that, the shaft's up in the air, and there is a bracket here, which has 2 bolts on it, which holds the shaft up against your dash area. Now, it's very simple to remove that. Drop it down, and at the base of the shaft back here, there's 4 bolts that you're going to want to remove that will allow the shaft to then drop. Your steering column shaft from the box is right in the middle of this. Also, there's wiring for your horn and turn signals, which is this connector right here. That unplugs. You're going to need to unplug that to take and remove this out, but it basically slips right off. Now, once I undid this and undid the bolts and I tried to pull it, it did not come out. It was very tight. And the reason is this pushes to the steering box and it's tight. So I just used a crowbar, put it on, twisted it 1/2 inch to take and release it, and that whole casing was then loose. And so it was very easy. It was easy to get that down. And once I did that, then you can slide your housing completely out. And this is what you'll have. You'll disconnect this. This is where your horn and turn signals are, and this slides right off of your shaft. One thing you may want to consider is this is all the connectors and mechanics for your turn signals and your horn, and you can get a new one. This unscrews, the wiring goes down the shaft, it goes out here. You can either use your existing connector and rewire it, or you can buy a new one, and I just bought a new one. So I'm going to be replacing this horn turn signal. Also, to make it easier, your turn signal switch right here just screws out. It'll unscrew, and then that way it's easy and you don't have this, which you could potentially take and snap off. So once you have that off, which really that should take you probably no more than an hour at the most. You're going to take and need to remove your pitman arm, and to do that you're going to need a pitman arm puller, and you're going to need a 1 5/16 socket to do that. Now that's the size of that is a 3/4 inch drive. So I took and I got the 1 5/16 socket for the bolt under the pitman arm, and I've heard that those were very hard to remove, and it actually was not. I used hand, I didn't even need a cheater bar on this. You can get these as loaners, or if you're really careful with them, you can buy it, use it once, put it on the back packaging, and take and return it, but I didn't say that. But you are going to need a 1 5/16 to remove the bolt, which is what holds the pitman arm. Also on this shaft, there's a gasket that goes against your firewall, and it's probably pretty old and worn. So you can buy a new one before you do this, so that when you put this shaft back on, this plugs against the firewall, and it'll give you a good seal. When I was driving this car, a lot of hot air from the engine would come up to me, and a lot of it was this piece here was no longer sealing between the shaft and the firewall. Once you have that done, you're going to need to go into the engine compartment to give yourself some room. You can see in here that what I've done is I removed the valve cover, I removed the master cylinder, I removed the Monte Carlo brace and the shock towers here. Now on this car, I have the single bar, but a stock 67, it's 2 separate bars. So you would actually only need to remove this side for this job. A stock small block, that part there, you wouldn't even need to do that. But once you take and remove that master cylinder, that valve cover, and this bar, you can see there's plenty of room to get down, and your steering box now with the pitman arm that's been unbolted, and then there's 3 bolts which hold the steering box to the frame, which you can get right from the side right here, not very difficult. Your bolts are underneath, and here is the pitman arm that's removed. I have power steering. I needed to disconnect that piece, 1 bolt, very easy. Then your steering box is now disconnected from the pitman arm and the frame, and you can grab that steering box, pull it straight forward through the engine compartment, and notice I removed the front seat to allow this shaft to go down, and it will pull straight out. And now there's my box. You can see I had plenty of room. I did not need to take and jack up the engine. The motor mounts are still bolted in. I haven't removed anything else underneath. And this is my old box and shaft, and here is the new one ready to go. Now, I bought this box from Dan at Chaco Stang, who really knows Mustang steerings. He specializes in it. So if you notice, the pitman arm is already pressed on the new box, and then the shaft is pressed in. You can buy these boxes from Scott Drake or Borgson. There's different manufacturers of the boxes that you can get just the box itself. But I'll tell you what, pressing that pitman arm takes something, and getting that shaft in. So this is exactly how the replacement shaft and box came from me from Dan at Choco Stang. But you saw how easy that pulled out. So I'm able to now slide this one in, and then I'll be bolting up my pitman arm, bolting it up to the frame, sliding the housing on, and then I'm going to replace this first, but then I'm actually taking that opportunity where a 67 manual steering had a 16-inch wheel, which was kind of a big tank, as probably a lot of people know. But I'm going to use that opportunity to replace it with a 14-inch Shelby style that will bolt right on. Now there are adapters. Notice the different connectors here. So there's an adapter that you can buy to replace the wheel with that. But once you have it off, for me anyway, I wanted to get to this more controllable 15-inch versus 16-inch. And you can see here are the parts that I removed. I removed one valve cover. I removed my master cylinder, which was a couple of bolts. I removed the pitman arm with my 3/4 inch drive, 1 5/16. I have some replacement parts on hand, so I have new gaskets and new wiring for the housing itself. And then sliding this back in is just basically going to be bolting everything up. If you go straight through and have all of the parts, can probably be a half-day job. You don't need to remove the motor. You don't need to remove the motor mounts and jack the engine up. If you're fairly mechanically inclined and you have most of the tools, I could easily see this being a half-day job. So Robert Dietz from Placerville with a 67 Mustang, doing a steering box swap to the 16:1 power steering ratio. Not all that difficult if you have the parts, and just wanted to let people know, because the things that I had seen told me I was going to have to remove the engine, the motor mounts, and in fact you can do it without it. Thanks from Placerville. Have fun with your project, guys.